Welcome back to Masters of the Air Insider. Today, I wanted to dive into the trailer of the long-awaited Masters of the Air miniseries, which is set to premiere on January 26, 2024 on Apple TV. This, of course, is the third installment from the production team that brought you Band of Brothers and The Pacific, and after many production delays and COVID, it is finally premiering this month. If you have not seen the trailer yet, then I would watch that first in its entirety, because I just plan on stopping and pausing it throughout to provide some introductions, backgrounds, and any insights we can glean from the trailer. Alright, so let's jump in.
So you alright, babe?
My girl worth riding to is hard to find.
So main character there, played by Austin Butler, of course of Elvis fame, is Major Gale Buck-Clevin. He is the first commanding officer of the 350th Squadron in that 100th Bomb Group. Of course, the show we anticipate to be majority about the 100th Bomb Group, also known as the Bloody 100th, one of the first bomb groups to go over to England in 1942. So the formation there is B17 bombers. That is the main aircraft that the 100th flew in Europe. If you haven't seen yet, I have posted some material on the B17 bomber. I think it's really important to understand that aircraft a little bit more. To break down the history of the B-17, what the crew positions were, how much protection or lack of protection the aircraft actually had. I think it'll provide some important context as you watch the show.
Not if you know where to look.
I'll miss you every second.
Major Eagan, you were the first pilot assigned to the 100th?
Me and Buck-Clevin.
So that is Major John Buck Eagan. Best friends with Buck-Clevin, so best friend. Same nickname. Doesn't make things confusing at all. He was the first operations officer of that 100th Bomb Group. He also ended up taking command of the 418th Squadron. He's one of the first pilots to go over to England. Buck-Clevin comes right after him. So to set the beginning time frame here, Buck-Clevin, Buck Eagan, they're some of the first pilots to head over to England. And so this would be June of 43. The bomb group wasn't even formed until the end of 42. Again, put in perspective more so, Pearl Harbor was the end of 41. That's what officially drew the U.S. into World War II. And as you can tell, we were not prepared for war by any stretch. So it really took us a full year and a half to even get these groups in formation, get pilots trained, get aircraft built, those kind of things. And so that's why it takes about 12 to 18 months before we even get some groups over to England to assist the RAF, the Royal Air Force, in the strategic bombing of these areas.
35 planes and 350 air crewmen.
Don't you die on me before I get over there. Something big is brewing.
The 8th will be sending up the largest air armada ever assembled in the history of mankind.
Now this mission here, I assume they're talking about the Regensburg Shrine for mission, which was in August of 1943. This was a massive mission of the 8th Air Force and the 100th Bomb Group, and it came at a heavy price. So my guess is we'll see a lot of battle, a lot of fighters, a lot of flak in these clips.
Straight into Hitler's territory.
And they're just real quick. You see the black puffs of smoke that is what's commonly referred to as flak. Anti-aircraft fire coming from the ground in Germany caused tons of damage. You hear from pilots all the time that the flak was so thick they could walk on. And what it is, it's almost like a gigantic 20-pound grenade thrown miles into the air, and then timed to explode and shoot shrapnel everywhere that can pierce the skin, the very thin skins of these B-17 bombers very easily. Just want to
complete and total air superiority. That's the mission.
Pause on air superiority. Huge statement is really the Allied forces cannot go into Europe on ground or by sea until they have air superiority. The Luftwaffe, the German Air Force is completely running the skies at this point. So when we're talking about air superiority, that's what we're talking about.
What?
You might be the last pretty face I ever see.
What's the move?
So you can see Buck-Clevin there in his B-17 after that mission, I assume. And it shows again these B-17s and why they were known as a flying fortress, both because of the amount of guns they had. What you saw in that clip in terms of the machine guns, but also just how many hits they could take and keep flying. So oftentimes, yes, these airplanes would be shot down frequently, or they'd have to bail out. But a lot of times they would make it back to England, and they would limp along.
We lead our boys through it.
All that we do. Day in, day out. Does something to a guy, doesn't it?
We're here to fight the monsters. The things these people are capable of.
So as Buck Eagan there sees a train go by with what you assume are victims heading to concentration camps. The only way he would see that is if he was on the ground in Germany and in heading to a POW camp himself, which will give us the first look into POW camps in any of these series, as that wasn't happening in Band of Brothers and the Pacific. So that'll be a really interesting narrative. To follow these aircrews into the stool logs is what they were called into Germany.
They got it coming. Trust me.
Lord, guard and guide the men who fly through the great spaces of the sky.
Are we Tuskegee men or what?
Interesting here. The Tuskegee Airmen were not part of the Air 8th Air Force. They were part of the 15th in Italy. So they were not with the 8th or the 100th Bomb Group. They were a group of fighter pilots trained in Tuskegee, Alabama, known as the Red Tails. They flew P-51s. There has been some movies about them already, but like I said, they weren't flying protection missions with the 100th, but they were flying over Axis territory. So if they were shot down, they would be sent to the same POW camps as the 100th. So presumably that's where these two storylines will intercede. So it'll be interesting to see just how much we follow the Tuskegee Airmen and their combat records, or if it's really just kind of the POW camps.
Be with them traversing the air in darkening storms or sunshine fair.
I think we may be done. We are gonna sit here and take it. We're gonna stick with our mission as long as we can fly.
We see Buck Eagan running with an American flag. I'm going to presume that is when that camp that he was in is liberated. So again, we're taken now from, probably late 1942 all the way, close to the end of the war or end of the war in 45.
We won't go without a fight.
So really interesting looking into the Masters of the Air. I think that trailer really sets the context as far as what to expect in this 9-part miniseries. The whole point of this channel was to really provide additional history and context and layering either before you watch the show, while you're watching the show, and after you watch the show. I found myself all the time going back when watching Band of Brothers in the Pacific and researching certain battles, certain characters, certain military events, and so again, that's the goal of the channel. So if you have enjoyed any of the content so far, or if that sounds like something that may interest you as well, I really encourage you to subscribe and like the videos that we're putting out there. That's really the only way I can continue to do it.